Hello, Aubrey. How's it going today?
I'm great. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm excited about today's conversation. We're going to learn a lot. Aubrey, how do you feel about diamonds? What are your thoughts on diamonds, especially diamond rings?
Yes, I'm pretty opposed, actually.
Mm,
I don't have a diamond because when I got married 20 years ago, it was really the height of conflict diamonds in Africa, and there was some
right.
awareness building. So I didn't want to have a diamond just in case it wasn't ethically sourced. And this
Yes, yes,
came up recently. I was very much like my antennae raised when you and Michelle were talking about the
yes.
phrase diamond in the rough. And you sort
Right.
of mentioned diamonds. And so I actually reached out to Michelle. I'm like, can I plan the follow up? Because I feel a little bit passionate about this topic.
I love it. Oh, so Aubrey, let's back up and talk about conversation. Do you end up having conversations about diamonds sometimes because it is such a controversial issue? Do you end up in these
Yes.
conversations sometimes with people?
That's a really good question because a lot of people notice that I don't have a diamond on my ring. And
Mhm.
that often has started the conversation. People will ask, why? Why don't I have a diamond? Because most people in the United States do have a diamond in some form on a
Yeah.
wedding ring.
Yeah.
And mine is, I don't know if you can see on YouTube. Maybe come and
Mm.
look, but mine is just gold and silver that I actually had an artist friend melt
Cool.
down and create our rings, which was fun,
I
but
love
no
that.
diamond. And
Yeah.
so I have had these conversations and they've gone very differently depending on the person. I've really had to read the room. Some people are open to find out why and not feel judged, even if they have a diamond on their finger. And
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people immediately, I can feel the shift in the room if they don't want to hear about it or think about it or if they feel judged in some way. And I just
For
quickly
sure.
change the subject.
Yes. And so, on this show, we talk about connection, not perfection. How can we find the connection moment when we're talking about anything? We're obsessed with that, right?
Absolutely.
But the fact is, Aubrey, not every conversation is going to immediately lead to connection the way we want it to, because the topic might be a hot button issue for both people, but in different directions. They disagree or they feel offended. So, what do we have to do, Aubrey? We have to look for what when it comes to approaching these topics?
We have to look for signals, right? We
Yeah.
know this is a controversial issue, just like politics, religion. There are
Yeah.
things that people will feel passionate or maybe they don't know about it at all. You can look at their eyes. You're going to see in their eyes if they're
Yes.
interested or if they're shutting down. You can see
Mhm.
in their body language, in their tone, and also their words, what they
Yes.
say when they respond. If they
Yes.
say, "Oh, that's interesting. I do have a diamond," and
Right.
you can tell they are
Sure.
feeling. You can feel
Yeah.
from them how they feel about the topic, and that will really inform the conversation.
Oh my gosh, for sure. So that is going to be what we're going to get out of today's episode. And we're going to go into the actual topic, the actual controversy today. I am curious if this is more so, if the consumption of diamonds, I have a feeling, is heavier in the US versus, let's say, Western Europe. I have a feeling
Right.
yes, but I'm not sure about that, Aubrey. I'm wondering if we're going to learn that today.
We'll definitely have that be our poll. So guys, stick
Yes.
around. We'll share our Spotify poll because we would like to know. We know, I haven't when I'm traveling, I don't look at people's rings. I haven't paid
Yeah, me
attention.
neither.
Like, is the market bigger in the US? I
Right,
have no
right.
idea.
Yeah, I don't really think to look. A lot of people think about looking to see if someone's married for whatever reason. I don't look at people's ring fingers very
I don't
much. It
either.
just doesn't cross my mind to look at
It
it. But
doesn't matter to me if someone's married.
yeah,
Like,
right.
I'm having the same conversation either way.
Exactly. All right. So let's make sure our listeners go back to the original episode where Michelle and I kind of popped up this issue and then backed away from it because we knew that we'd come back to this at some point. Right.
Absolutely. It was episode 2169 of the Allers
Hmm.
English podcast, Pearls of English Wisdom. You guys
Yes.
shared amazing idioms when we talk about gems and diamonds and pearls. We use these idiomatically in English. So if you missed that, go back, listen to it. Be sure to hit follow because you're missing great episodes.
Yes, I love it. So, all right, we know what we're talking about today. We know what we're going to come away with in today's episode, which is the skill to approach a difficult conversation like diamonds.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about what exactly are we talking about. We have to define some terms, right, Aubrey? So we have words, vocabulary to use in these conversations, right?
Exactly, because best case scenario, the person you're talking to will be interested and will want to have this conversation, and then you
For
need
sure.
some vocabulary. So, a few terms here. The first one is conflict diamonds, which I shared
Mhm.
at the beginning. What does that mean, Lindsay?
Okay, so there's another term sometimes used for this, which is blood diamond. I think there was a movie, I want to
Yes,
say
with
Leonardo
Leonardo DiCaprio.
DiCaprio, right? And we don't
Yeah.
know how super accurate the movie is. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But basically, diamonds that are illegally traded to fund conflict in war war torn areas. So, conflict diamonds is the term that might come up in that conversation, guys.
Right. And
Okay.
we'll go into the history a little bit here because this was a much bigger issue in the 1980s, 1990s. Some
Right.
political strides have been made to make this better, but unfortunately,
Yes.
it is still an issue. So, our second
Yeah.
term is ethically sourced, which
Mm.
means this can be for anything, not just diamonds. It's a product, and the materials involved with it are all obtained in an ethical way throughout the entire business chain of entire supply chain.
Yes, I love that. So the idea that an ethically sourced diamond comes from a mine that's in compliance, although that's hard to confirm, right? That's kind of part of the
Exactly.
challenge is that that's really hard, a mine that doesn't have child labor, forced labor, things like that. So that's really what we're
Exactly.
talking about when we talk about ethically sourced.
Right, there are, like,
Uh,
certifications and, these mines are supposed to prove that they,
mhm.
are, following strict labor regulations, environmental regulations, but
Yeah.
we can't personally go to the mine and confirm any of that, so there's a certain level of trust that we
Oh,
have.
for sure, for sure. Okay, and then number 3, cubic zirconia. This might come up in our English conversations about this. What is that, and how is it different from a diamond?
That's very different from a diamond. It's synthetic material that
Okay.
is created with very different materials than diamonds. There's no carbon, right? You melt zirconium
Um,
oxide powder with stabilizers like calcium and magnesium, and then they cut and polish them to look like diamonds. But the chemical properties are totally different. So
yeah.
it's like when I was buying wedding rings, these were a little more popular. Maybe you would see because this
Ah,
next term, lab grown diamonds, weren't as
was not
well
a
known
thing
and
yet.
popular as they
Okay.
are today.
Right, and so now it's a big thing, a lab-grown diamond, that's the next term, right? Where they what is this? They manufacture it in a lab, it sounds like. Very interesting.
Exactly, right? They're
Yeah.
created in a facility using diamond seeds, which
Ah,
are single crystal diamonds in a slice, very tiny, about as thick as a single human hair. And they
huh.
use these technological processes, high pressure, high temperature processes that
Mm,
result in diamonds with identical chemical, physical, and optical characteristics as natural diamonds. So they're
interesting.
also made out of crystallized carbon. They end up being virtually a diamond, but just
Okay,
that's man-made instead of grown over millions of years in a
I
mine.
love it. I like okay, so we've gone through the vocabulary. This is the vocabulary you guys might end up using if you do get the signs from someone that you can go ahead and talk about this, right? That they're
Exactly.
not, feeling
Closed off to the conversation,
closed off to the
right?
conversation. And when we come back from our break, let's get into the conflict a little bit, right, Aubrey? Just to get a
Yes,
sense of what's going on. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, Aubrey, we are back from our break. I'm ready to talk about this conflict. Tell us about what we need to know here.
Yeah, so it is vital to know about the history if you're going to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And I found a great organization called diamondsforpeace.org, and I looked at a few different sites. It looked like all of this was pretty accurate, that
Mhm.
during the 1980s and 1990s there were intense civil wars in Africa that led
Yes.
to human rights violations as both
Mm.
governments and rebel groups used diamond revenue to buy arms, to buy
Mhm.
weapons. And
Mm.
so there were a lot of human rights abuses in diamond mines, child labor, bonded labor, um, ill treatment, violence, and even sexual abuse, sexual
Mm.
assaults. So it was really a terrible situation back then. Luckily, it improved a little bit in 2002. The
Okay.
Kimberley Process Certification Scheme was adopted by the United Nations,
Okay.
which seeks to ban the trade in diamonds from conflict zones.
Okay, I see. And so that's where the term conflict free diamond comes sometimes, where,
Mhm.
if you go to any of the modern, if you go to buy a diamond online now within the United States, you'll often see conflict free, right? Is one. But
Yes.
again, so hard to verify that, even if it fits within the certification process, there's so much going on that we just can't know as a consumer, right?
Exactly. That brings us to sort of the current situation where even today, human rights are often violated in the diamond fields. There are a
Mhm.
lot of things happening. It's very many levels here. And I found an interesting article called Why Africa Bleeds Diamond Revenues from DW.com by
Mm.
Nusa E. Silva
Okay.
in February of 2023. And so just we'll go over some of the points of the reasons that diamond mining is still problematic today.
Okay. All right. Where are we going to start then? So we get a little taste of the idea here, guys, is not for us to tell you everything, right? Because
Right.
you have to go out on your own. If you're interested in this topic, go find the information on your own. Go read this article. We want to show you today how you might approach this in a conversation. We're going to get a little substance here to make sure we have something to work with, right?
Exactly. Yes. And your friends, family, if they're not ready to have this conversation, you can let them know, you could research this, you can find out, and this
Mhm.
is the information that they will find online. So
Okay.
just first, that local communities are really missing out on profits still. This is still an issue where even though Africa holds this extensive mineral wealth, the revenue generated is often going to those big brand jewelers that end up selling the diamonds, and little is being done to improve the quality of life of the people who live in those local communities.
Oh my gosh, for sure, for sure. And what else, Aubrey? What do we need to know? So first of all, local communities are not making the vast majority of the money that's being made that people are paying for these diamonds, right? And so there's still poverty happening. That's yeah, that's depressing actually.
Exactly.
To
And a
think
lot
about
of
it.
that is because these big name jewelry companies are taking advantage of political instability, right? If
Okay.
these governments were very stable and there weren't still regime changes often, it would be
Right.
more difficult for them. This wouldn't be
Right.
the case as much. This diamond revenue would likely be going back into these communities. But so it
Mm.
really feels unethical and unfair for big, rich companies to kind of be taking advantage of these lesser developed areas.
Okay. So, and what else, Aubrey? So, illegal diamond mining being prevalent. And obviously, if
Yes.
there's illegal mining happening, that's not being regulated in any way or happening under the Kimberley Act, correct?
Exactly. So there are two markets for exploitation of mineral resources. First is the formal extractive industry, which is easier to regulate. They have certificates, but also there's clandestine, secret
Mm.
operations, which are dominated by miners, and
Hmm.
sponsors, which is someone who
Hmm.
pays miners to go deep into the bush, into the jungle, harvest
Okay.
illegally. They buy them from them, fake the certificates. So
Yeah.
there's just potential that the diamonds people are buying are not regulated, are not conflict
Yes.
free.
Oh, 100%. Oh my gosh. Yes. So that's another, another, what else do we need to know, Aubrey, in terms of the conflict?
Yeah, just the last thing really is just that there's a lot of passion toward the developed world turning a blind eye to these issues. A
Yeah.
lot of us assume that the issue has been resolved. We probably heard about conflict diamonds. Maybe we saw that film Blood Diamonds, but we know that it's better now. We've been told
Right.
diamonds now are conflict free. And we are sort of
Right.
turning a blind eye because it is a difficult discussion to have.
For sure, for sure. And I think it's really interesting as well because I think we don't think about other rocks and gems also, right? I was recently listening to a podcast where it was the kind of scenario where the interviewer would interview someone about their business and they would dig into kind of the depths of their business and really understand how they make money. And the person being interviewed on the podcast was an owner of a rock and gem shop actually in my area. And
Okay.
he and she really dug it. So it wasn't diamonds that he was selling, it was something else. I think it might have been rubies or tourmaline or
Mm,
something a little more common that many of us might have. And it was a similar issue
mm.
digging into, okay, but where did that, but who mined that? Are you sure? How do you know? Right. So I think we
Not
kind of
just
forget
diamonds.
that it's not just diamonds, right?
Hmm.
It's this whole world of rocks and gems and the natural. Anytime we're getting natural resources for many things, we don't know much of what's actually happening, which is kind of crazy,
It
right?
is kind of crazy, and when we think about an issue like this, there is value in increasing public awareness. So there is value in just broaching the subject with
Hmm.
anyone you know and then seeing how it goes. So right now we're going to share you a great phrase you could use
Yeah.
and then what you need to do depending on how it's accepted, how it's received.
Yes. All right. So, how would you go about if you're brave, right? Not everyone necessarily wants to start this conversation.
Totally.
It's okay if it is within your personality or if it's something you feel really passionate about, whether it's diamonds or rubies or other types of gems or any industry that you feel something is wrong, right? People are being
Right.
taken advantage of. How would you go about starting that
This
question,
is a
opening that
pro tip
question?
that Everyone loves to hear. I love when people start a conversation with, I heard a podcast about blank. Have you heard about this? And
Right.
now, with the episode we just shared with you guys, you can use this phrase.
Sure.
I heard a podcast about how diamond mining is still an issue. Have you heard about
Mm.
this? It's
Yes.
true. You've heard our episode. And then from there, what do you
Yeah.
do, Lindsay?
You read the room, and I just laugh because that was exactly how I opened up my contribution there about the other types of gems and minerals, right? The issues.
Exactly. Well, I heard
We get our
fast.
information from podcasts a lot, but it
Yeah.
could also be I heard a news segment, I
Right.
listened to
I
the
read an
radio,
article.
I watched a movie, and I didn't know,
Mhm.
right? So then the next step after you've asked that question is to go ahead and read the room. What do we mean by read the room, Aubrey? What does
Yeah,
that
so
mean?
this is what we talked about at the top of the episode a little bit. Notice body language, right?
Yeah.
Eye contact. How are they pulling in on themselves and their shoulders are hunching, or are they opening up to the
Right.
conversation? You can really read a person and if they want to talk about what you brought up, and
Mm.
also continue to read the room as the conversation continues. Because if you start to talk about the history a little bit, the current situation, ask
Yeah.
them what they think,
Mm.
make it a conversation. At any time they might start closing off a little bit, and
Yeah.
you could say, I'm curious to read a lot more about this, maybe you are too, and then change the conversation. It doesn't have to be something that gets super deep. You're
Yeah.
sort of trying to just open their perspective to find out more on their own.
Yeah, and we're not lecturing people, we're not making them feel
Right.
stupid if they're not aware of certain things, it's
That
not
breaks the
about that.
connection.
Yes, exactly. I mean, really, this episode is about something bigger than this, it's about disagreement broadly on any issue, right? And we're in
Exactly.
a place where we're such a divided world right now, at least in the US, we're very divided. So how do we approach these conversations where we disagree on a deep level, Aubrey? What, you know?
Exactly. And something
Yeah.
like this is tricky too, because you also have the implied idea that maybe this is something they should have known about. That's
Y
happened to me sometimes. Someone will
yeah.
bring something up, and I feel a little humbled, like, I can't believe I hadn't heard about that. I should have known about this. So we
Yeah.
also have to be careful there too, with our intonation, make sure we don't sound like we're judging someone, and not saying anything that makes it feel like they should have already known this. We're just broaching the subject with the goal of having an interesting conversation, deepening that connection.
Yes, I love that. All right, what is the takeaway for today, Aubrey? I guess that is the takeaway, right?
Yeah.
Don't shy away from these things. You have the language at this level of you can understand, 75% of this show. You have the skills you need to start these conversations. These conversations are what we need to come together as a community, as a world, society, American culture, again, to start to bridge the gaps that are starting to exist, right?
Absolutely, right? Spark the conversation with someone you know well.
Mhm.
Use our phrase today and then read the room, and it might really deepen the connection.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, thanks for bringing this in, Aubrey. Thanks for approaching this topic. We like to go into the deeper things once in a while on All Ears English. Guys, hit follow on the show if you love this show. Good stuff. Talk to you soon,
Awesome.
Aubrey. All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lindsay. Bye.
Bye.